You need to hit present to everyone as well, right?
Maybe, yeah. Just got it. All right.
All right, cool. We're there. So just to show you guys really quick, this is the part where this is your portal for submitting an app. This is where it gets like really exciting, where you build everything. You start like getting pictures and like having your description up there and like your contact information and whatnot. And this is like my list of rejections from Apple. So like the first part, my very first reaction was like, we found that your app is like very boring. It only has 4 screens. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? And it turns out I didn't learn auto layout. So on an iPhone 5, it cuts off the sign in button. So they couldn't sign in the actual app. So I was like, of course it's not 4 screens. So yeah. So auto layout is very important. So that's why we're doing this.
So you waited a week to hear that, and then
2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And then what? What's the next one?
And then there's a lot of them. There's some that I thought were like kind of BS, so I just submitted it again, and it turns out they rejected me again. So I eventually had to do the work. But yeah, they're pretty strict. They're getting more and more strict. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys this for like how important like auto layout is. They definitely test your app on all devices to make sure it's like compatible with iPhone 5, maybe even like an iPhone 4. But yeah, cool. So I send you guys a link on, if you guys want to follow along, I made like a little slide right above TJ's post. If you guys want to follow along, if you don't, that's cool too. You can just look at the screen. So let me try this. I'm going to try it just from Chrome. All right, so the visual format language. That's what I'm going to be going over today. So let's talk about auto layout. So basically, this slide is just telling you what auto layout is. It's basically a system that lets you build out how your user positioned based on a list of constraints. So you specify that it can only be 25% of the width of the super view. It can only be 50 points pinned to the left from the the super view, or 50 points pinned to the top. So it's basically a system of constraints. And visual format language is basically your auto layout constraint written in code. And there's the what there. You guys can read over. And I think I put the why because in development, you're gonna run into like a galaxy of tools. Just so many tools, so many features that people try to sell you on, so many SDKs, and you always want to ask, why do I need this? Don't just spend your time and learn something just to find out that it's not really that useful. So definitely, because your time is really valuable, so you don't want to waste your time learning a feature that is not that important, or a tool or a technology. So why do we use the visual format language? We use it to essentially, when we want to programmatically create constraints, we want to use the visual format language. When we want to debug auto layout constraints, and it's a lot shorter to write constraints in the visual format language than creating NS layout constraint objects. So I'll show you that really quick by what I mean. Let's see, so I have this here. So for example, I have this like nib file. We talked about nib files, and the use case for them is when we want to reuse a view. So like, for example, like Radius on the App Store, I want to place this in like a couple view controllers. So it's a good place to put in a nib file, and I want to reuse it. So the way we've learned auto layout, we can't really like dynamically put that nib file here and specify the constraints. Like there's no way, like we specify auto layouts in a single screen, but we can't grab that nib file and specify auto layout constraints there. So we got to do that through the visual format language. We got to do that programmatically. So that's one use case. The second use case, I built this like login screen here. This is a true story for my Inspire app. I built this login screen here. And as you notice, there's no like conflicting constraints. Like everything seems good, everything's blue, all the constraints are laid out. And I'm gonna run this really quick, or not quick.
For the nib file, you can add it, or you can add it but don't add the constraints visually.
In storyboard?
Yes.
I don't think so. I think for NIF files, you need to programmatically insert them into view controllers. Yeah, because I can't like drag this NIF file into the storyboard. It just doesn't work that way. Cool. So as you notice, when I ran this, well, first off, my text fields aren't there, and secondly, I got this giant list of like, you know, constraint conflicts. And I was experiencing this with Inspire, and I checked my auto layout constraints like 10 times, and everything's blue, everything looks all right, but why am I getting these layout constraints? And I was fighting it for the longest time. I didn't want to learn visual format language. I didn't want to learn something new. But in order for me to even understand like 1% of what this is saying, I had to learn it. I had to know what this meant. Because at runtime, your constraints might not work out the way that you expect them to. And this is your only feedback that you're getting. It's in the console. So if you guys are curious what's wrong with this, is because there's a bottom constraint here. And I set the bottom constraint to be 300, and it's an iPhone 5. Let's see, did I just lose connection here? Something's wrong with my AirPlay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, basically I set the bottom constraint here to be 307, and this is using an iPhone 6, 4.7 inch. That's why it didn't work. So basically, if you guys were curious, I can just take out this bottom constraint and it would work fine. But I mean, this is just a simple case. I mean, in actuality, when you actually run your programs, like sometimes your constraints don't behave the way you want them to. And it's very important for you to be able to read that message to get that feedback on what's wrong. And
so to interrupt, Ben,
yeah,
your camera just switched from your screencast
to myself. Hey. Screen share. Cool. Is that good? No. You gotta present to everyone.
You get present to everyone. I think if you turn your camera off, it won't switch.
How do I turn my camera off?
The middle button and that kind of.
This one? Is that it? Is that good?
Yeah, probably.
Cool. Okay.
There's a delay.
All right. And I just wanted to demo you guys the reasons why you want to use visual format language. So the third reason is there's two ways of programmatically specifying constraints. So one of them is to actually make the constraint objects yourself. And this is how you would build the constraint objects and its layout constraint. And as you can tell, this is like not pretty at all. This is not friendly to read at all, and it's very hard to like reason about it if you're reading this whole thing. If we use VFL to specify these two constraints, all we have to do is specify the box view and these two pipe symbols. So compare that, creating constraint objects with VFL. VFL is a lot shorter, right? I mean, that's like 7 characters. So that's just really quick segue on why you would want to use VFL. Should I hide this? Cool. So let's talk about how we set up our views to use VFL. So in the first step is to instantiate the view object. Right here, I'm setting a background color so I can differentiate the view. The second step is we need to set a property called translate auto resizing mask into constraints, and we need to set that to false. So what happens when you add a subview to a superview is that based on its position, iOS would automatically set constraints. It would automatically generate constraints. By setting it to false, you're basically telling iOS, like, don't automatically generate auto layout constraints from my view. I'm going to specify them for you. So you're just going to set that to false every single time. Third step's pretty straightforward. You add your view that you've created to your super view. And the fourth step, you actually use the VFL right there, as you can see in the red, and you just add the constraints. Now 1, 2, and 3 seems good, but like this seems kind of tricky. Like this looks kind of tough and kind of difficult to read. So let's actually break it down. This is the function. You know, it's not that scary. It's nothing more, nothing less. We can break this down to 4 parts. The first argument, the first parameter is the format, and that's basically the meat of the topic. That's basically where you're specifying your visual format language. The second part is options. You generally use that for layout purposes, for alignment-ish purposes. The third is metrics, and you pass it a dictionary where you want to store values, like a specific height, like let's say it's 30 points. A specific margin is 8 points, so when you want to specify like metrics, you put that into a dictionary. And the fourth argument, you specify the actual views that belong in this constraint. So this is just breaking it down. It'll make more sense as we start coding. So visual format language, it's a language in and of itself. Regardless of whether or not you're using Objective-C or you're using Swift, you're gonna use this language. So this is a really mini compact language that you use, and its sole purpose is to specify auto layout constraints. That's its only purpose. And it's very small language, it's a very compact language, so the set of characters that are used in this language is very limited. So in this language, when you want to specify a view, you basically use these 2 brackets and you place the name of the view. So square brackets indicate that you're talking about a view object. The pipe character represents the super view. Let's see. I'm gonna pause here fast. So this is my box. This is my subview. My super view is, you know, the main view. So the pipe represents that, the super view. Spacing is represented by the dash character. So you guys already know spacing. You guys know that, you know, you can pin this to the left by like 20 points. The spacing itself is represented by the dash character. And one more rule you need to follow is that you always want to add your subview to your superview before specifying the constraints, before you put in the visual format language. So this is basically the visual format language in action. So we have this button view, and we know it's a view object because of the curly brackets, the brackets that we specified. And these 2 dashes basically represent the super view. And this 1 dash represents the standard spacing. And according to Stack Overflow, the standard spacing is 8 points between sibling views. So when you have 2 sibling views, that's 8 points. And between the subview and the superview is 20 points. So that's the standard spacing. So the first declaration here basically indicates that there's a button and its standard spacing pinned to the left of the superview and to the right of the superview. Does that make sense? You guys, does that make sense? Cool, so the next one is basically you're only pinning this button to the left of the superview by the standard spacing, which is 8 points. When you don't have a dash and you have this superview character, that indicates it's basically saying that you have 0 spacing. You basically have 0 here. And this is an invalid visual format language syntax. Basically, you don't have anything relative to pin this to, so you're basically pinning this to like nothing, and your program would probably crash. So does those 3 examples like make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Cool. So this is where we add more power and more flexibility to our visual format language. So you guys know about standard spacing, that's 20 points, but what if you actually want to hard code in how much spacing you want? So you can actually have 2 dashes and then the actual number you want. So I want this to be like 30 points, 30.0. So this is 30 spacing. So you can tell that this is called the visual format language for a reason. You can almost visualize this, exactly from my illustration here.
Does it have to be like a double or a float? This is the decimal.
I don't think so, but I usually just default to double or to float to decimal value. So you can be more dynamic. You don't have to specify a hard-coded number. You can actually put a variable here. And if you want to specify the actual width of this element, inside these curly braces, you put a quotes, and then you put an actual raw value here. Or just like with spacing, you can put a variable here. So that specifies the width of your view. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Pretty straightforward so far? Okay, cool. So metrics is just basically numbers. So this is where it gets even more interesting, where you can actually specify relationships between two subviews. So what's going on right there is that you have your super view, and then you have the standard spacing, and then you have the first button, and you have a standard spacing between the button and the second button. So this is actually, remember in the earlier slide, the standard spacing between this view and the super view is 8 points. The standard spacing between two siblings is 20 points. And this is basically saying that the second button is pinned to the right of the super view by the standard spacing. So there's two types of constraints, I guess, two ways to specify your constraints. You either can specify your constraints vertically or horizontally. So by default, I think it goes horizontal. Yeah, so all these examples so far have dealt with horizontal. So it's basically like not putting this. So if you want to specify a vertical constraint, you basically start your VFL with a prefix, either V for vertical constraint or H for horizontal constraint. So while this is saying that I'm pinning, so this is saying I have a box here, and I'm pinning it 8 points. Your horizontal is saying I have my subview here and I'm pinning it 8 points horizontally. So basically everything you learned up to now applies to both horizontal and vertical. Yeah.
Wait, isn't it 20 points between the view?
Oh yeah. I was just catching if you're paying attention. Okay. So yeah, 20 points. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can even get a little bit more fancy with inequalities. This is really up to you whether or not you want to use it. Basically, you don't have to exactly specify that it's 20 points. You can say that as long as it's greater or equal to 20 points, then the constraint is met. So basically, you can do that in spacing. You can express inequalities in spacing, where you specify like these parentheses and the value, and you put the inequality operator before the value itself. You can specify inequalities in spacing, in widths and heights, in spacings between sibling views. So inequality just gives you more flexibility in your constraints. And I think that's really it for the visual format language. It's not that scary. There wasn't that much documentation on the visual format language, so but once you start understanding it, you wouldn't need that much documentation anyways. So these are like just a few quick exercises on practicing your visual format language skills. So can anyone tell me what's going on? Or can anyone draw what's going on with the first one? I want to try. Yeah.
I'll try.
There you go.
Right here.
Yeah, anywhere you want. Okay.
That's the avatar view, and it has a height of height, and it's spacing to the super view is 20, but I'm not sure in what direction that is. Like on the side, I'd say here.
So there's two possibilities, right? And
Yeah.
it could be either horizontal or vertical. And the way we specify it is with this
Oh, it's
prefix.
vertical. And it's
Yeah. So that's how we disambiguate vertical horizontal. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, that's pretty clear, right? Let's do Who wants to do the third one? Third one. So you basically have a sign-in view and a login view. Think of them as like text fields. Let's draw the third one. Yeah, wanna try it? Cool.
We can erase that. Oh. Okay, so there's super view and then we have the sign in
Mhm.
and login views. And then this is the standard spacing, which is 8 points. And super views 20 points.
Sweet.
Right? And oh.
Wait, that might actually be that's like a different that's good.
Oh,
just think of the just think
like
of
a
just think of
second
the other
one?
one. Yeah, think of the other one as a different. Think of the other one as a different different. It's different, completely
Oh, okay.
different. Yeah. Think of the, I know I put that. So think you have a sign-in view and a login view.
Yeah, and then so you have a sign in view, a login view, which have 30 points between them.
Yeah.
But you're not specifying
So that's a
from the super view, which I don't.
Yeah.
So there.
So
Is that okay?
so that would be an example where this would be a constraint that's not formatted properly, right? Because you didn't specify where it pins to. And this combination, what you'll run into a conflict. So you would get that nasty error message.
Why will you run into a conflict? Hadn't they be like,
Yeah.
Or-
not in
oh yeah, it
single
might be.
Flash.
It might be.
Yes, because you meet the very
Yeah.
one.
I guess there's only one way to find out. Yeah, we can go to see. Yeah, that's actually interesting. Maybe I can do that for the demo. Cool, but that's good job. Yeah, I think you guys get the gist of it. I'll do the last one. So. We have the super view, and then we have this table title. And is it 5?
Yeah.
5. Yeah, 5. And you have the table view, which is the list. And this is pinned to the bottom. 20 greater or equal to 20. So this is a little bit more lenient. As long as it's greater or equal to 20, then it's valid. So I think this was an actual constraint that I used. And we know that it's from top to bottom because its prefix would be, which stands for vertical, the stands for horizontal. Cool. So after a while, it gets kind of fun. Yeah.
The middle one that you were just discussing with the V, vertical colon sign in 30. Doesn't that have to have a Python set for develop?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think that's invalid. Cool. So let me actually write code now and run them on Xcode for you guys. So let's try this out. And you guys can follow along if you want, but I've already written all of this already, and I've taken a lot of notes on them and comments on them. I'll send it to you guys on Slack after I'm done with it. So whatever helps you learn, if you want to follow along or if you just want to absorb the information. So it's already written for you guys. Cool. So I have the storyboard here. It's an empty class. And this is where I'm going to start specifying constraints. We're going to do the same examples that you guys done interface builder for the auto layouts, but we're gonna do it in BFL, and it's a way for you to get a taste of both of them. Cool. So the first objective is to make two views where one takes up the
Can you send it before so we can?
Do you guys want it before?
Yeah.
Before and after, so we can.
What do you mean before? Oh, you mean, well, this is, before is like an empty file, right? What do you mean by
But we can try to do it ourselves and then check what you did.
Oh, during, okay, well, yeah, I guess, you guys want that?
I think you can, right? You're not starting with any code right now.
No.
That's correct. So you can just open up a new project and you're good.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, you guys want me to start from the very beginning, basically?
No.
Okay, okay, because this is just a, I just created a new file. It's a class called BFL View Controller, and it's completely blank. And in my storyboard, I have an empty view controller, and I named it BFL View Controller. I'm actually gonna set this to be the initial view controller, so it starts off with this. Cool, so let's get started on the first one. So the first view takes up the entire left side of the screen, 50 points wide. The other view takes up the rest. So there's gonna be two views. I'm going to call the first view the left view. I'm gonna create a UI view object. And I'm gonna call the second view the right view. I'm calling it UI view, instantiate a UI view object. Now I want some sort of color to differentiate them so you know that they are the views. They are the left and the right views. So background color. Blue. Background color. Brown. Okay. Cool. So pretty straightforward here. Nothing special, right? I just created two view objects, gave them background color. Let's see.
Sorry, Dan, do you mind just scrolling up?
Yeah.
No, I can see
That good?
that.
Even more? Actually, let me make this full screen. Is that as up as I can get? Got it?
No, that's good. That's
All right, cool. So, so I always need to do this step when I'm specifying constraints myself. I basically need to say set translate auto resizing mask constraints. Set it equal to false. And again, that's basically telling iOS, look, don't create auto constraints automatically. I'm going to take control here. I'm going to specify the constraints. So my right view, set translate auto constraints, false.
If you don't write it, would it just assume true?
Yeah, it defaults into true, which is why we need to set it to false. So
You're doing all this inside of you did both? Or,
I'm just doing this for, yeah, for demo purposes. Cool. Do you guys want me to scroll up a little bit or
yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So the next step is that I need to add these two view objects I created into my main view. So that has to be done. Self.view, add subview, left view, self.view, add subview, right view. Cool. So these are kind of like housekeeping things you need to do. The next step is I need a views dictionary. Let views. And basically you want to specify what views are going to be part of this constraint. So there's only two views, which is the left view and the right view. Cool. And metrics is for any like hard-coded number we want to put into this. And because the instruction says the left view is 50 points wide, I'm going to specify a metrics. I'm going to call it left view width, and it's going to be 50. Cool. So this is the part where we actually specify the constraints after all that. So we want to put the constraints in the parent view of these two views. So there's a method called add constraints. And in here we pass NS layout constraints. NS layout constraint is the class because Swift is object oriented, so the constraints themselves are objects. So this is an actual class. And there's a method on this class called constraints with visual format language. Let's scroll down a little bit. Am I going too fast, or you guys get a little bit? Okay, cool. So this is where my actual visual format language is going to be. I'm going to leave it blank right now. Options, I'm not going to pass any options. Metrics, I'm going to pass in the metrics dictionary that I initially created. Views, I'm going to pass in the views dictionary that I initially created. So like, the visual format language is very compact and very small, but like a lot of it is just housekeeping things you need to do. You need to create the views, you need to add them to your parent view, you need to set the translate auto resizing mask to false, and this is where you actually add the constraints. Cool, so the first constraint I'm gonna have is, actually I like copy and pasting this because I'm doing the same thing. I'm gonna have multiple, I'm gonna have vertical and horizontal constraints, so it's basically the same thing. First thing I'm going to do is, let's see here. I want to specify a horizontal constraint.
Why is it in type string?
Because the visual format language is just, you just wrap it inside a string. Yeah. So I'm going to specify horizontal constraint. I'm just reading the instructions here so I know what to do. Actually, scroll up. So I'm going to specify a horizontal constraint, and there's only two players here. There's the left view, and there's the right view. So cool. So I have these two view objects, and notice that they're named exactly what the key is of this dictionary. So I can name this LV, and as long as I name this LV, it's fine. So this is how it knows the variable name, because I specified it in the dictionary itself. I specified the key in the dictionary. So I want the left view to be pinned to the super view. I want its width to be 50. I can either put 50.0 here, or I put the actual value in my metrics. And generally speaking, you want to put all these hard-coded values in your metrics so you don't have to like skim through your visual format language for these hard-coded numbers. So metrics is the place where you put these hard-coded numbers. So I want there to be 0 spacing between the two. And by doing this, by basically putting these views next to each other, it's implied that it's 0 spacing. Or you can be explicit and just do this. Same difference. It's just less code if you do this. And less code is generally better. Yeah, so this. Cool. And the right view, I want it to be pinned to the super view. And that's it for my horizontal constraints. So notice how it says constraints, plural. This is actually creating multiple constraints for us. This is pinning it to the left. This is creating a width constraint. This is creating a spacing constraint between the two. And this is creating a trailing space constraint between the right view and the super view. So a lot has been done for us in this one line. So it's pretty cool. The VFL is pretty cool. And next, we want the vertical constraint. So we want the left view to be basically pinned to the top of the super view and pinned to the bottom of the super view. And we do the exact same thing for the right view. Specify vertical constraint and basically pin the right view. So I mean, this kind of looks like a lot of code, but the VFL is really the heart of it, and it's the meat of it. And it's basically, this is really all you care about. Now let's try to run this and see if it crashes. Hopefully not. Cool. And just to be safe, okay, there's no errors. Yeah, you never know. That's probably upside down mode. That's probably why it didn't work. But yeah, does that make sense to everyone? VFO is pretty straightforward because you can actually somehow magically visualize this, right? You can't visualize like code sometimes, like you can't really visualize these lines of code, but you can actually visualize this. Cool. So let's turn from a very easy example to a kind of hard one, the grid layout, the 16 by 9 one. And then after I do the more complicated one, you guys can do an exercise yourselves. All right, so this is a little bit more intense. This is the grid layout. Do you guys remember what it looked like? Cool. Actually, I might want to do this kind of fast. Let's see.
So I noticed you don't use dashes in any of those. Is there a reason why you do in some cases and you don't in others?
When you have no dashes, it implies that it's basically synonymous with 0.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if you're putting like a constraints in the trailing or like the pre, do you not need the dashes? Can you just put in 30?
Where?
Like instead of this right now, can you just put in 30?
Like this?
There's a space in between them? Yeah.
No, the dash indicates that it's a spacing.
Okay.
Otherwise, 30 is meaningless by itself.
Okay.
So this dash indicates spacing.
Cool.
Will you send us the first one?
Yeah, I have it all already. So I'm gonna try to like do this a little bit faster. So this is the grid layout. This is a little bit more complicated. Basically, my first step is to create the views. And I have a main banner. At the first thumbnail. Third nail, fourth thumbnail. Cool. And I need to turn off translate auto resizing mass into constraints. Set translate false. I need to do the same thing for every view. I mean, there's probably a smarter way to do this, a faster way to do this, to put them in a loop, but for the purpose of this demo, 3, 4. And then we need different background colors. So the main banner color. So we want orange color, black color, blue color, green color. Actually twice. Red color. Then we add subviews. What's up?
Yeah.
Oh, is this fast for you guys? I thought this would be like super slow. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the main banner. This could be the main banner, and then I'm just gonna. You know, the secret to being fast is copy and pasting. And of course, if you did something wrong, you have to undo the copy and pasting. So thumb 2, thumb 3, 4. This is like the worst one to do in a demo. Cool. So the metrics, I actually want the banner height, the main banner height to be a metrics. So this is a little bit interesting where, let's put it for 0 for now. I want the thumbnail height to be 80. So to get the banner height, what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of math, just a little bit. I'm going to get the views width, and I'm going to multiply it by the aspect ratio. Does that make sense to you guys, what I just did there? Or do you want me to do it really fast? I got this. Let's see. Okay.
You just let the space between the 16 and the device.
Cool, good catch. Do you guys understand how I got this height? Do like a quick, you want me to do like a quick illustration of how, okay, cool. Just do it really fast. So 16 by 9 is the aspect ratio. Okay.
Instead of frame, do you write bounds?
In this case, yes, should be good. And basically, I want to know what the width of the super view is. So let's say, for example, the super view is like 320. Let's say I actually get a value, but I don't know what the height is. So this is width and this is height. So I basically need to solve for x. So if I solve for x, it would be 320 times 9 over 16. And x would be the height. So simple algebra, solve for x. Cool. Cool, let's actually do the visual format language now. So we have self.view, add constraints. Nest layout constraint is the class for constraints. Constraints with visual format language is the method we want to use. This is where the visual format language goes. We don't want any options. We put in our metrics dictionary and we put in our views dictionary, which we specified here. Again, views is basically the players who's going to be in this constraint, and metrics is basically going to be the hard-coded values, the integer values. In this case, the main banner height and the thumb height are the actual values.
You could not have the metrics already and put the values straight.
Yeah, you can do that. It's just better practice.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely.
Wait, so there's no metric? No. Or you're gonna put them in. Sorry.
Oh, options should be nil, not 0. Cool, and I'm gonna copy and paste this a few times because I'm gonna have different rules. So the first rule I'm gonna have is I want the main banner to be pinned to the top. And it's going to have a main banner height. And I want underneath that main banner, the thumbnail to be pinned to the top, the first thumbnail. And it's gonna have a thumb height. Cool, so that's just a vertical constraint. And the next constraint, I'm going to specify basically the heights for thumb 2, thumb 3, and thumb 4. So this is my thumb 2. And I want its height to be thumb height. Thumb 3. I want its height. Remember, you use parentheses to specify the width or the height. In this case, I have the V prefix, so I know it's vertical. So thumb height. Thumb 4. Oh, that's a lot better. Thumb height. Cool, so this basically puts the main banner at the top with main banner height, and it puts the thumb one underneath it with a thumb height. And this basically sets the other 3 thumbnails to the height that we specified in the metrics. So I got I think I got one more constraint. Okay, I got 2 more constraints. So I specify my horizontal constraints. I'm going to specify my vertical constraints. I want the main banner to be pinned to the edges of the left and the right, to the super view. And this is where I specify the horizontal constraints for all my thumbnails. So this is going to be a little bit interesting. So I want thumb 1, I want thumb 2, thumb 3, and thumb 4. Basically, I'm stacking them all together horizontally. Thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 3, thumb 4. And a neat trick I can do is I can set the width of thumb 2 to equal to thumb 1. So they all have to be equal widths to thumb 1. And the 4th thumb needs to be pinned to the edge of the super view, the right edge. The 1st thumb needs to be pinned to the left edge of the super view. And remember how I said earlier, options is for alignments. I want them all to be layout format options. I want them all to align center Y. So all these 4 views are going to align to their center Y. And because I specified this vertical constraint, I know where the thumb 1 is going to be. Let's run this and see how it goes really quick. Oh, cool. So this is a little bit complex, just a little bit. So let's actually try to work through this. So the first constraint, I have my main banner. It's a vertical constraint, and I want it to be the height. I've did a little bit of math here, and I know what the height would be. It's predetermined here. And basically right here, I'm saying thumb 1 should be right underneath the main banner because it's a vertical constraint. It's pinned underneath, and it should be 80 pixels or 80 points. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th constraint is basically setting this height to be 80, this height to be 80, and this height to be 80. The 5th constraint is basically setting the banner. It's pinning the banner to the super view by 0 to the left, and it's pinning it to the right by 0. This is an important one. This is basically specifying the horizontal constraint. It's saying that thumb 1 should be here, thumb 2 should be next to it, thumb 3 should be next to that, thumb 4 should be next to it, next to thumb 3. And basically the rule is thumb 1 has to be pinned to the left of the super view, and thumb 4 needs to be pinned to the right of the super view, and they all need to equal to the width of thumb 1. So, and this alignment basically, so this center align center Y basically aligns these 3 with the blue line. That was it. Yeah. Does that make sense to everyone? That's a little bit. I've written everything, and every line is commented, so I can post that on Slack. So we got like 15 minutes left. So how about like as an exercise, we do number 2. So I'll post it on Slack, and you guys can try it out with the visual format language. Let's see. So try this out with the VFL. So check your Slack, check the Slack channel, and try it out, and let's see if you guys can get this done. Just create 2 view objects and use the constraints. And let me actually reconnect it really quick so you guys can see the.
Yeah, screen, big cast.
Yeah.
Switch off. Yes.
Yeah, my computer's freezing, but basically if you guys want, go to my slides, and in the one of the slides, it has 4 steps on what you need to do, and just follow those steps. The real trick is knowing what the VFL is. Isn't really the housekeeping things you need to do. So
I was able to copy the first example. Maybe I could
Oh,
send
yeah,
it
we can send that.
How did you send code?
Oh, okay.
I
I think it's like shift enter.
and Chrome is always better. So basically you want, I mean, these 4 steps is really like housekeeping things you want to take care of. Create your views, set that property to false, add that view to your super view, and this is where it really matters, the constraints, the visual format language, the center of the topic. This is the constraint you want to be focused on. You guys have any questions you want to ask right now about the language itself? No?
Did you post the code that
I just posted the, yeah, the code.
Both of them?
Just the one I've been working on in class.
Yeah, the one, those 2.
So this one actually has like everything, I think.
oh, you did load.
Yeah, this one has layout 1, 2, and 5. And I'll send it to you guys after this exercise. Just a small hint, if you want the width of your super view, you want to access this property. So if you want it half, you just multiply that by 0.5. So this is how you access your entire view's width. And if you want 50% of that, just multiply that by 0.5. Which screen is more helpful to you guys? This one? Okay. Yeah.
I ran it, I just got a white screen.
You just got did you set your view controller properly? We do this for like 3 more minutes and then we'll wrap it up. Oh, it is set up. You add your subviews. So when you create oh, you copy and paste the code?
Yeah. I mean, I wrote some of it.
Oh, this is called VFL view controller. So that class is not VFL view controller.
Oh, it's just called.
How can we do like we just have but because if I shift
Yeah,
the
that's
width it's still
Yeah. That's what it should be. I can tell you, you probably want to register an event to listen when when it switches and then recalculate the strings.
So you can do aspect ratio.
That's very good.
One quick announcement before more people slip away. Happy mid-course day, everyone. It is class 12 out of 24, halfway there. So, I sent out the mid-course feedback survey, which is required to get the final certificate. So please, it only takes 10 minutes. Please do it by the next class. And if you do, we'll have some pizza for you. So, yeah, please do that. Let us know how things are going, what you're enjoying, and any ways we can make your experience even better. Thanks.
Cool. Does anyone want to demo what they got and just explain to the class on this exercise? Still working on it? Okay. A little complicated? Okay. Yeah. What's up?
So this is. So those aren't squares.
Oh.
So the reason why that's happening is because you calculate the size on load, and not on like rotation, right?
So I should put all that code in, basically.
I think you want to do this one.
Yeah.
You should you would use NSF constraint with the painful option.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because you'd actually want aspect ratio.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the only negative about the accounts that don't do aspect ratio.
Yeah, and it's hard to modify
I'm
the
surprised this
constraints.
actually worked because you're grabbing the height before the view has been added. Oh, you have the view in storyboard? Where do you declare?
Main
Main banner, and then you grab the main banner's view.frame that size. Oh, you're asking yourself.
Yeah.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah, so that works, but then once you're used, you
Right.
change the size. So that's
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to if you want to like manipulate any one of those constraints. Yeah. Cool. So I guess we'll just wrap it up right now. I mean, do you have any final words you want to say?
You're gonna send it there?
Yeah, I'll send it.
and can we download the slides?
Yeah.
I tried to do it and
That doesn't work. It was. So this is like I'll send you guys the solutions to all three, and like there's comments on like every single line, and every single line I explain what the constraint is. So hopefully that will help you guys. I'll send it right now on Slack. I'll send the file. Cool. So you guys all have the solution. Yeah. You ready to present? All right. Cool. That's about it for my end. You wanna end the class?
Well, let's give a round of applause for Brenner for that.
Let's get turn this off.